I'm so glad you guys are here. Yes, I am a DO, an osteopathic physician, family physician from West Virginia, and I graduated from medical school in 1996, so you guys can do the math. Maybe, I don't know. We've had some math problems this year, it seems, at the legislature. Well, and I just have to say, I was disappointed and disheartened by the way things went down the last week of the session, because I was a freshman legislator and I was so excited to see how everything went, and yeah, tactics infuriated us. You know, we were infuriated. But what happened was we were called into special session that I didn't think was actually needed. When that special session was called, a group of people decided to suspend all of our rules that we normally have in the Senate, which meant that legislation and amendments that we were given really minutes before we went to the floor and were expected to vote on was not given hearings, so there was no public input, which to me was the most appalling part, because I'm there to be your voice, and so there was no chance to hear from the public on those amendments. There was no chance for the public to contact me so I could be your voice on those amendments. There was no debate in the committee amongst the legislators, and then once we got to the floor, the people who sponsored the amendments refused to yield to questions from the other legislators who weren't privy to whatever was offered. And then we have to vote. You can't abstain unless you're not there physically. If you're not physically there, you cannot vote, but if we're in the chamber, we're expected to vote. So our no votes were basically too few, and so all of that legislation passed through with very little public oversight, and that's the part that really I thought was harmful, and I will strive to stop from happening in the future. So I wanted to give you a couple of the things, some of the significant legislation that did pass this year. Regarding the budget, I know everybody's concerned about the budget. It is balanced for fiscal year 2014. We did keep the $450 million in the rainy day fund for emergencies, and we maintained the $300 million in the carryover fund, or the carry forward. It does allow Arizona to be structurally balanced, which isn't exactly balanced, but structurally balanced through 2016. All of the counties except Maricopa and Pima will get $550,000. Now, the governor didn't want Pinal, Yavapai, and Mojave to get that money, but we did fight for that. I sponsored an amendment, but I thought that actually Senator McGuire's was better because hers was drafted the way I wanted mine to be drafted. She's one of the Democrats that said everybody gets $550. I didn't want the total to be added up and then divided 13 ways. I wanted everybody to get the $550,000 that was promised to them from lottery funds. Now, that actually isn't going to come from lottery funds in the way that they drafted it into the things that were kind of shoved down our throats. It's actually going to come from the general fund. But Mojave County will be getting that $550,000. This year. Okay, so Child Protective Services is always a hot topic. We did appropriate money for 200 additional CPS caseworkers and staff, and an additional $69 million in funding for CPS. Education, I'm always getting questions about education. We added $82 million in funding for K-12. So I hope that's going to, if we didn't earmark it for things, we allowed the local districts to spend it on things that they thought were a priority for their district. So $82 million for K-12. We did invest $2 million into the rural community colleges. I would like to see that be more, but $2 million is no tiny amount. And then we did do the parity funding for NAU and ASU. We gave $15 million for that. There was a lot of debate over if that is too much money or not enough money. What they're trying to do is get the 3 state-funded universities to be on an even playing field. And NAU and ASU have always gotten less money than U of A. And so they're trying to get everybody on an even keel. And then we put some new performance measures in place so that as we move forward, the universities are being rewarded on outcomes rather than just on butts in the seats. So we actually are rewarding them on how many degrees and how many people graduate, rather than just who starts out and never finishes. School safety, we did put in $3.6 million in additional funding for school safety equipment and school resource officers. We did some tax reform. We did the TPT simplification, which should be a huge benefit to businesses, both large and small, in lessening the tax regulation and compliance issues. Businesses are going to have a single point of payment, a web portal, and a single audit source, because sometimes they're getting audited by the city, they're getting audited by the county, they're getting audited by the state, and if they do businesses in multiple cities, they could have, you know, several audits in a year, and that just really does disrupt business. It also shifts the repair and maintenance projects from prime contracting to point of sale, which I think this has made it a little bit more complicated rather than simplifying, but our cities and towns finally agreed in the final hour that they were on board with this, and it did go through. We also got instant income tax instant depreciation, which excludes amounts deducted from the federal gross income as depreciation of property after tax year 2013 from Arizona gross income. So that should help some of our businesses as well. We also allowed college savings plans to increase. And then finally, my favorite, and probably yours as well, I can see how I changed that back to this page, is Medicaid expansion. Now, that has been obviously a big bone of contention down at the legislature, and the governor did embrace full implementation of Obamacare, and she strong-armed the passage of Medicaid expansion in Arizona, and that's why we ended up with the things that happened the last week of the session. So it does add hundreds of thousands of people to the access rolls. There's really a small cost to the state for the first 3 years, but after that first 3 years, I think there's going to be a tremendous cost. There's also a tax that's added onto our hospitals that we don't know how much it's going to be. We don't know if it's going to be transferred to people. We really don't know, and we're allowing the access director to have full taxing ability, basically, to determine who to tax and then who to reward with that tax money. So we'll see how that all plays out. There is an initiative that's going to be in place to help repeal or at least slow down that process. And I hope that all of you will help get involved with that. I will be involved as well, so if you have any questions after, I'd be glad to see and hear from you. One last thing, I do think as I started out, I think it's very important to hear from constituents, to hear from people that I represent. I love to communicate with people. If you email me at my legislative email, I answer all of those myself. Sometimes they don't, I don't answer with the things that you want me to say, but I tell you the truth all the time. And I also am pretty active on Facebook, so if you're on Facebook, please like my page so that you can keep up to date about what's going on, when there's new events happening, when we're going to be out and about. And also you can message me with things that are going on, like this thing with the grocery stores and the things with the roads and those kind of things, so that we can get the ball rolling at the state level and make things happen for the people in Legislative District 5. Thank you.
Senator, share your experiences.
Well, like Steve was telling you, I was in the Marines for 22 years now. I'm not a very eloquent speaker, like Senator Ward here, but I've been to 3 circuses and a rodeo, and I've never seen stuff like this before. I enjoyed my session up there. It was a mission. It was a lot of work. Spent a lot of time reading. I'm dyslexic, so it takes me a while to read everything. I have to read it twice, so hopefully I don't miss things. Exactly. And seeing what happened this past week was really despicable. I've never seen a more dishonorable actions by people claiming to be honorable in my entire life. What happened in the House was the Speaker of the House was negotiating with the 9th floor on a House budget, because when it came over from the Senate, when the Senate got rolled by their defectors, and it appears that there were 9 Republican representatives that were having their own negotiations going on with the 9th floor, which undermines the House leadership's position trying to negotiate. Well, when you're trying to negotiate against a stacked deck, trying to play cards, when everybody else sees your hand, it's a little bit, the outcome's going to be pretty ugly. What had happened was, of course, it was spun in the newspaper in Phoenix by the Capitol Slimes and the Arizona Republican, because they've never spoken the truth as far as I've been there. I see so much spin more there than I said on the 70 RPM record. But they had said in the news that what they wanted, the House was trying to play games by taking the day off on Wednesday because we were in session on Monday, we were in session on Tuesday, and then we recessed until Thursday, giving everybody enough time to get their amendments in to the House budget. Well, a bunch of Democrats, the leadership of the Democratic Party and the 9 Republicans went up, well not all 9, but who knows, 8, but went up to the 9th floor and were screaming and yelling that we're not going to have enough, it's a statement from the Democrat side, that we're not going to have enough members there because some of them were planning on going vacation, so they needed to have everybody there, and they were trying to stall, so to try to play games and drag things out, which is entirely untrue. What we were trying to do is give them one more day to get their amendments in, to put on the House Republican bill budget, so that way, everybody could have some input, because on Tuesday, there was an ambulance bill that they could have actually put an amendment on for the Medicaid expansion. Well, they didn't want it that way. They were looking for some type of cover. So the governor called a special session, dragged us in on Tuesday night, and we had fun and games all night long, and then of course, then they played, some more.
Biggest fan, my biggest supporter, and he does everything and helps me so much. I couldn't do anything without him. He was down in Phoenix. We were just getting ready to go out to dinner, where he was looking at Facebook and he saw a post from Kelly Townsend. Some of you may know Kelly Townsend. She is a very conservative legislator from Phoenix, and she said she had seen a tweet from Jeff Dial, who was one of the reps who was kind of part of the coup, that said there was a special session. And she's like, I haven't been notified of a special session, and it was 5:30, and it said the governor called a special session at 5 p.m. What? So I started texting people. I didn't find anything. One of the majority staff from the Senate called me at about 5:32 and said, oh, we've just been called into special session at 5 p.m. It's 5:30, mind you. And so come on over to the legislature. He goes, well, you don't need to come right away. We don't know exactly when it's going to start, but there's some rumblings that they're going to unseat the Senate president on our side. And so they had notified all of the Democrats knew, they were all there. All of the people that were the 6 that were joining with the Democrats knew and were there. I got there, because my office is kind of along the side, so I walked down the Democrat hall. There's mostly Democrats on one side. They're popping popcorn, having a big old time over there. Our assistants are all gone because they didn't tell our assistants either. Even though the special session was called at 5 p.m., they leave at 5 p.m. All of our assistants were gone. They were like, what the heck? What happened last night? So there was something definitely afoot, and then it changed. I think that some of the Republicans may have come to their senses and said, well, maybe it's not a good idea for us to go that far if we can still get what we want without doing it. For me, I think it's a shame to, it's always been that the Senate president is elected from the majority party. For them to think about 5 or 6 people in our side, on the Senate side, joining with the minority party to elect a different leader of that body, because that's just harmful, and unless somebody's done something really, really wrong, morally wrong, criminally wrong, then I could see doing that and enrolling your leadership that you decided was going to be good at the beginning of the session. But that also was something that disappointed me as a new person down there. So just want you guys to know what's really happening at the legislature.
I just want to know, I want to let everybody know that I didn't know whether to cry out of patriotism when I watched that very late session, when people were not answering, refusing to take a question, or hang my head in shame. We're all Americans, first and foremost. And by God, we better start acting like it. Thank you for what you do, and I hope that you weren't afraid to come and speak to us today.
Not at all. Actually, I went to the Liberty Festival.
Delineate your plans for dismantling the Common Core.
Thank you. Well, I guess mostly, I think, well, I don't know if everyone here knows, but I have been opposed to Common Core, as has Representative Borelli. Not that I think that everything in it is horrible, but but I don't like the way it comes down. I don't think that education in America is supposed to be top-down, created by a consortium of national and international experts, and then handed down to our local districts. Sunny has a book over there. I would invite you to peruse it because it's an interesting book. It's a social studies book from Lake Havasu High School, where my kids go. Well, I have one child that's left in high school, Cameron, and it's got some fairly concerning things in it. That if the kids don't have someone at home to discuss those issues, it may lead to something that I consider personally indoctrination. And so, we as parents and we as community members, whether you're a parent or you're not, need to be vigilant about what's happening. So, right now, the state school board has promised the legislature that they're going to be bringing us some other form of assessment, not just the park assessment that goes with Common Core, that goes with the consortium that created this. We're one of 23 states in the park consortium. There's 23 others that are in the Smarter Balance. Yes, I know it sounds like the butter. Smarter Balance, the other coalition. So they're supposed to be bringing us several choices along with data about those tests to say how they perform. I don't think that can be done before January. They haven't even beta tested some of the, our park assessment hasn't even beta tested the questions on actual children. We don't have the infrastructure set up to test all these kids electronically. Those tests all have to be done on the internet. We don't know if it's even going to give us data that's useful. When they told us the AIDS test, they told us it was the be-all, end-all, it would tell us everything we needed to know about our kids. And now we found out that it's right. Now we found out that it's not what we thought it would be. I do have some concerns about the database. It's the state longitudinal database system. I've asked about what are we going to collect. There are 1,500 points that could be collected. The state school board hasn't decided which ones they're going to collect yet. I did get a spreadsheet of that, and there are many things that are concerning that people might not want them to know. But also, of more concern, we're going to start collecting data on our kids from birth to age 20. Now, after 20, there's going to be other things, because I believe in the immigration law, there's some database things for adults. So don't think you're going to be left out just because you're a grown-up. The government will be collecting data on you, too. And so, as the time goes on, Sunny actually put in an amendment this time. It was shot down, of course, because he wasn't part of the cartel that was opposed to us. But we will both be introducing legislation, I'm sure, in January to try to dismantle, as Linda so eloquently put it, the Common Core in Anderson, and keep education.
I don't understand how your efforts to work against the poor and suffering getting access to health care advance your espoused Christian values. Can you explain?
Thank you. I don't work against the things that you mentioned. I work for the hardworking taxpayer. I believe in charity, which is a Christian principle, but that's an individual level, not a government job. I don't think it's the government's job to provide everything for everyone. From my reading of the Bible, neither did Jesus. He expected people to be personally responsible and to help each other and to love one another, but he didn't expect Caesar to take care of the people. So, yeah, cradle to grave. The people who are expecting cradle to grave care, I think are going to have a rude awakening as the people who are producing shrink and the people who are having their hand out increase. There's just simply not going to be enough. And so we need to start teaching our kids and teaching ourselves how to be personally responsible and make it in this world without a handout from the government.
River Tea Party Patriots. I'm also the wife of an incredibly hardworking OBGYN. And before I ask my question, I would like to say that what good is affordable health care without the best and brightest physicians?
That's
So many
right.
people forget to realize that physicians don't work for free, and that's what's happening.
Well, but Obama said everybody doesn't need a doctor.
I know. My question is to both of you. Well, first of all, I'd like to say I had a director who said you're only as good as your word, and I feel so refreshed to have two people that are holding their word and doing a great job, so thank you. I know that there are plans to repeal or get enough signatures to repeal Medicaid. If that doesn't work, is there a plan to defund it?
Yes, it's called a new governor.
Well, I worry that we've gotten ourselves into quite a conundrum because once we sign on with the federal government, we're trying to call this the new Medicaid, that we're going to be able to make up all these rules. I mean, once we sign on to Medicaid, we, as Arizona, are going to be under the rules of Medicaid. And it's difficult to get out of Medicaid. Even with circuit breakers, it's difficult to get out of the program once you've embarked on it. And so I don't know that as a state there'll be anything that we can do other than this citizens referendum. So I hope everybody can go to urapc.org. So, and they're all letters, urapc.org, and sign up, because we need to get signatures. We have to collect 86,000 good signatures, so that means we need about 125,000 signatures just in case there are any bad ones. And we only have 3 months to do it. I think it's fitting that the last day to collect those signatures is September 10th of this year, because should the next day prove that we don't have the signatures, it will be like September 11th all over again.
My question to both of you is this, and you had made comment on a bill having another little in it, and you vote it through. Is there any way that you can pass a bill that another bill can't be on it when you submit a bill? I mean, logically, you gotta stop it so that you have that time to see it. My question of you for you in the future is, can you stretch your time frame to stop this idiosyncrasies that we have? And it's not just here, it's even in the federal government.
I think it's worse at the federal level even than here.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of that stems from the rules of each body, and it stems from the Constitution, and it stems from legislation that has been in place over years and years and years. So it's not as simple. I don't think there would be a simple solution that just said every bill needs to be regarding a single subject, because even then, I mean, anything that we try to add on during all of these extra times have to be germane to the bill. So you have to find, he said, Sonny mentioned that there was an ambulance bill that they could have added Medicaid expansion because it was medically related, then it would be related to that and they could have added it on. So even if you try to keep it to one subject, they can still manipulate and maneuver to add it on. And some of the people pass bills, I mean, they go into our house, they're already, and that's something for me that I haven't learned very well yet, is the collusion between the two sides to pass a bill that they don't really care about that much, so that the other house can use it to add something on that they might not get through their body originally, or might not get through our house originally. So it comes to the Senate, we vote it down. Well, they, Representative X already has an agreement with Senator Y, so Senator Y has something and lets them put it back on, and then we never see it again.
And this is about the Common Core, and I know we're trying to fight it, but if we're going to get stuck with it, is there a way you can tag on that we have to learn the Constitution?
Yeah.
My name is Bergen Pitchfork Freed, and I want to thank you for standing your ground and not backing down. No matter what party is represented here today, I'm sure that not one single person in this room would sign a contract without reading it. This isn't just a contract. These are laws, long-reaching laws with implications that are going to go far beyond some of our lifetimes. And thank you for standing your ground and not signing on to these legislation. Number two, you can ask any Native American if you can trust what our government says.
I often say, if you want to see socialism in action, just go to a reservation. I mean, it is barren, it's desolate, it is not a place of prosperity and hope, and lively entrepreneurship. It is socialism right here on our soil.